Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and today I'm talking with Gerken, who tells his story of when he was overweight and consuming so much soda that he says he was addicted to it. Listen to his inspiring story. So, Jeff, I'm going to ask you to explain to me a bit about what your life was like when you were still consuming sugar, and as far as I know, in liquid and bubbly form, right?
Right. So I grew up drinking soda at home, often, all the time. That was the main thing that we drank. That was my father would provide it. I lived with my father a lot. My parents got divorced, um, and he always had soda, and I drank that more than water, more than anything else, just all the time drinking soda.
How much would you say that you used to get through in a day or a week or a given time?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, but we bought it typically in 2 liter or 3 liter bottles, and we actually were buying it the it'd be a half gallon. Then eventually it switched to the liters. And the one thing I do remember as a kid is that the if you buy a 3 liter bottle, it'd be more likely to go flat before you finish it because it's such a huge volume. So, but maybe I could think in terms of glasses. I probably drank, I would have to say, at least 4 glasses a day. So each of those glasses could have been, 12 ounces. I don't know if you want to do the conversion to
Yeah.
work on that.
I mean, that's so. Would you say that you only drank soda, or did you drink other types of liquids?
I would drink milk, but if it was milk, it was usually chocolate milk. So it had a lot of sugar in it. And at school too, you could get, I remember as a kid getting milk, but it was always chocolate milk. I would never drink white milk at school. It was always chocolate. And then I would also drink orange juice. You could get orange juice at school too. Because I don't remember like in the cafeteria that we would have access to soda in school. And I don't think at the time when I was a child that the school was like trying to make any kind of health statement. They weren't making any nutrition statements. I just don't remember soda being available in the cafeterias. There's probably vending machines, but I know in the cafeteria there would be juice or milk. And so I would get orange juice, which has a lot of sugar. It probably was not a very natural orange juice. It's probably been highly processed. And I would get chocolate milk.
So, how old were you, if you remember, how old were you when you started drinking soda, orange juice, chocolate milk?
Far back as I can remember, my parents got divorced at age 10. It's like my age 10, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'm trying to remember my life before they got divorced, and we lived in a house in the neighborhood, and then like after that divorce, we had to go separate ways, and I lived in apartments with my dad. So I'm thinking back to that neighborhood situation before age 10, and I remember having soda then, like going to a local store, or like a corner store, a small store, and as a child, and my parents buying. So it wasn't just my dad doing this, my mom too, like buy me soda. And I remember getting a can of grape soda, and I don't know how old I would have been. Like it seems like this memory goes back to like age 6 maybe, that I remember a grape soda, and I think that may have been the first time I had grape soda, and I remember how good it tasted.
Sure, yeah,
and,
I bet you do.
and I would have had soda before that, but maybe it was orange soda, or maybe some kind of cola that with the grape soda I remember. But I think that memory is probably around like age 6.
Right.
I was having soda at least, by that time, all the time having soda.
And would you say that your habits or what your parents offered you, because obviously you're at that age, you're not going to the store and buying this stuff, it's your parents buying it for you, right? At that young of an age. Would you say that after the divorce, that their habits changed? Like in the sense that now, looking back with hindsight, would you say that they offered you soda as a way of sort of, compensating for the divorce?
No, I don't think so at all. I think it was just how they were doing things. So I'm the youngest of four boys. Wherever we would go, there was soda available, and so I would be there with soda. So it's not like my parents were ever like trying to give me something special.
Gotcha. And your three brothers and your parents drank soda as well?
Yes.
Yeah, all the family. Okay, gotcha. And were you consuming other forms of sugar at the same time?
Yeah, I would have to say, we had candy bars. And I know my mom's always been a big chocolate fan, and my father was not, but my mom was always a big fan of chocolate. My father would drink a lot of soda too, and I remember him even like I remember one time he had a headache and he took aspirin and he took it with soda, and it's like the carbonation in the aspirin. I knew that that would be all like bubbly, but that's how he would do it. And so I would have candy bars as a kid. So obviously, and chocolate and candy, different kinds of candy with sugar. And when I was a kid, being 55, so I was born in 1965. So a lot of the memories would be from like say 1975. That's when I was 10 years old. That's around the time my parents got divorced. And so shortly after, before or after, so you're talking mid 70s. And so there weren't diet sugar-free things. Everything had sugar in it. So, if we got gum, if I had gum as a kid, there was sugar in it. The candy had sugar. Um, the only thing that, well, no, actually, I was going to say the only thing that wouldn't have sugar would be the potato chips, but what I ate was barbecue potato chips,
Mm,
and they're highly sugared. And I remember as a child that I always had barbecue potato chips.
okay, yeah. And I mean, potato chips themselves are high in starches, so that, in itself is a type of sugar, but we don't see it as such.
Right, but the barbecue flavoring is a sugared flavoring.
Yeah, this added sugar in the flavorings, right?
Yep.
Yeah, crazy. So, how old were you when you realized that all this intake of sugar was affecting your health?
Not until I became an adult, I think, for me, because as a child, I was active and skinny, which was common for most children. Then it was very, very rare to see a child who was obese, at least in my circles of people I interacted with. And I would think that most children in my generation were eating a lot of sugar, but we were active. We were always, like I said, I was tagging along with my brothers. They got into various sports, so I was learning sports at a young age. And we were always outside riding bicycles, and we were just like nonstop moving around. And so all the way through high school, where I did school sports, I was still thin, and it wasn't until after high school, maybe I'm trying to pick an age, but somewhere around, I think certainly by age 25, the tide had turned, and I'm sure between age 20 and 25, I started going up in pant sizes, and I remember thinking that they were like shrinking in the laundry.
Yeah, good one.
But I had never, and this is probably different for uh, young women, girls that maybe they had a different self-image, but I wasn't aware of a concern of getting too fat. And so I wasn't like thinking that, oh, I was going to get fat. That was never in my head as a. And the interesting thing is, I think back in retrospect, is that my father was fat, and I just thought of him as being an old fat man. That was my image of him, that he was fat. And then I remember one time that he told me, and I don't know how old I don't know how old I was when he told me this, but he told me that he used to run cross country in school. And I remember thinking there's no way you ever ran cross country.
Because he was fat?
Yeah, because he was fat. I had run cross country in school. I had run track and played soccer and run cross country. And when he told me he had run cross country, I was like, it's impossible. I was like, how could you run? It's like a 3.5 mile race, through fields, up and down hills. How could you have done that? It didn't dawn on me. This is how naive we are in youth, right? It didn't dawn on me that when he was in high school, he was as rail thin as I was.
Yeah.
So I looked at him. I saw an old fat man. That was my image of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so but I never made the connection, and my family never made the connection of going from a young, skinny person to an old, fat person. That something has to happen between starting point A and end point B. And I know this, in retrospect, this must sound terribly naive, but I mean, this really was my worldview. It's like, he was old and fat and he had always been that way. And I was young and skinny and I had always been that way. And I had never really thought about, there's a bridge between those two. And I'm on that bridge walking toward obesity and I'm not even aware of it. And like I say, until like my mid-20s, when I had my own job and I'm buying my own clothes and I'm seeing that my pants are shrinking in the laundry.
Yeah. And you're still naive enough to think it's your pants' fault.
Right. And then when I got married, and my wife's a great cook, and by that time I was definitely getting heavier. And then we would kind of jokingly blame it on her cooking, but I at least understood at that point that I was eating too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't I couldn't stop it. So I would at least blame my not stopping on her cooking being so good. So as I was putting on weight, like it slowly must have started coming on after high school, after I was done with high school sports, right? I was actually getting complimented for being fat, as I think about it in retrospect, because I never gained any muscle after high school. It's like, if I go back to when I was playing sports, I was the most fit I had ever been in my life. I had all the muscles. I also did some farm work part-time. So I was doing farm work, lifting up hay bales and feed bags, 100-pound feed bags. I was the most fit and strongest I would ever be. And I was the type of person with a smooth, lean muscles. I was running. So any compliment I ever got on bulking up as I developed into a young man was actually only about getting fatter. And it's like I wasn't aware of that at the moment, but I think I took any compliment and saying, "Oh, well, this is good. I'll, keep eating, keep bulking up." But I know I didn't gain any strength or muscle. It was just fat. It's very soon in my mid-20s that the fat would start to be in the gut area, where you don't get compliments on that.
Right. And for men, it does tend to pool around the midsection, whereas for us women, it's a lot more the hips and the bottom. And yeah. Were you still drinking soda and chocolate milk and orange juice at that time?
I was. So around that time would be when I started to wonder about what could I do. And my first thoughts were that I've got to exercise more. It was not about changing diet.
And where did that thought come from? Did it come from you, or did it come from messages that you received?
Well, no, it came from me, because I thought, well, I had this image of myself when I was in high school and I was playing sports and I was running cross country. I was, whatever I was doing, it was running. And then I look at myself as I'm married and, uh, have other obligations, and I'm gaining weight, and I'm thinking, oh, what I'm not doing is I'm not running. I'm not exercising enough. And if I would simply, uh, start running again, I could get back to being skinny. That was my mindset.
And did you try it? Did you try running again?
I had half-hearted efforts at running and exercising, but busy with life, doing other things, and it kind of not really, developed. And so I would keep getting fat. And I think we'd have to fast forward until when I had my own child, and he was going to play soccer, and we're talking like a 10-year-old kid, even earlier, maybe 6, 7. and he's going to play soccer, and um, I'm with other parents with their children, and I had my son when I was 40, so we're going all the way up to past 40, heading to like 45 years old, and so I'm was relatively an older dad. Most dads were younger. The idea started to form up a soccer team, and I was like, that sounds fun. I want to do that, and I want to lose weight. I want to get in shape. And it's at that point in time that I also said, you may ask, like, where did this idea came from? But I think by then I had learned enough about dieting that the idea came to me that I would need to diet and exercise, both of them.
Yeah.
And so I decided, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to join this soccer team that's being formed, in high school I was 145, and at that point I was 225, which on me was totally obese. And if I was going to be able to lose that weight, and this is around age 45, if I was going to lose weight and play soccer, that I had to diet and exercise. And if I'm going to diet, then I knew at that point I've got to quit soda.
You made that connection, not necessarily I've got to eat less, but I've got to quit soda.
It's kind of sad that I didn't learn this till I was like 45, but it was like I learned that was just liquid, empty calories, the sugar coming in that served no purpose. So it's kind of more difficult to say I'm going to eat less food that's nutritious, because at this point I was probably pre-diabetic. There's like, as I understand it, there's symptoms that go along with putting on excess fat in the midsection. There's a constant hunger, always needing to eat, and if you don't eat in a couple hours, you get very weak. And so the idea of eating less solid foods was not as appealing to me, because I thought I needed the nutrition, I needed the energy, but I knew that the sugar in the soda was something that had no nutrition. It had no benefit for me.
And were you still drinking as much soda as when you were a kid at this age, at 45?
I was, and an additional reason that I didn't have when I was a kid is that I had stress in job. So that anytime I was, by this time I was working in an office, sitting down at a desk, and if I was given a project to do, in order to focus on that project, I would often go get a soda. I was not a coffee drinker. I've never been a coffee drinker. So I would get um, caffeine and sugar together, and the caffeine would help me concentrate to focus. So before I could ever do anything, I had to go grab a soda in order to get that project done. And that was my way of coping with stress. And this was when I realized, when I decided that I was going to quit soda, is when I realized how difficult it was going to be. I mean,
Yeah.
extremely difficult. It was like almost impossible.
Yes. Yes. So what kind of was that tipping point where you actually turned that realization, I've got to quit soda, into action?
Well, it happened again. It goes back to standing around the soccer field talking to the dads, and one dad was already on some soccer team, and he wanted to form a team of local people in this local area, and I wanted to do that. So like I really wanted to join that group and get in shape. And I had this, the self-image of myself. It's like, I'm this old fat man, and these are younger, stronger dads. Many of them have not let themselves go as much as I had. So it was something that I really wanted to do. And so when I made the connection that I had to diet, and that kicking soda, that soda was the least needed thing nutritionally, had no place in my life. And so I was just determined that that's what I had to do. But like I said, I found it difficult, but I knew I had to do it, at least in my mind, that was my goal, that was my determination, my stubbornness. So even though it was going to be nearly impossible, I was going to do it.
And so you had like a motivator that was strong enough, or stronger than the difficulty of stopping the soda. Did you do it cold turkey and just never touch soda again, or was it more of a bumpy ride?
It was bumpy, but when I quit soda, I think I went through stages of I know I'm trying to fit in where it worked to going to diet soda, because I was thinking I need to go to diet soda because it doesn't have the sugar, but it had all the sweetness, and I realized that affected my food. Like, it made it more difficult to eat nutritious, made it difficult to eat something like an apple, because you could drink. I've learned, in retrospect, like, you can drink water and then eat an apple, and the apple tastes great because it's natural sweet. But if I was drinking a diet soda and then I was to pick up an apple, the apple would taste like crap. It's like, I can't have that. What goes good with a diet soda is a candy bar, because you go from the one sweet to something that's even sweeter.
Yeah.
So I realized that it wasn't just sugar soda, it was also the diet soda to go. And when I made that determination, it was still bumpy. I needed some crutch, something to hang on to, and I switched to the carbonated, flavored seltzers. And that still wasn't really good for eating an apple, but it wasn't as bad as the diet sodas. And I also was able to deal with stress by grabbing a bottle and drinking it, and it's very a tactile experience of, you touch it and you bring it up to your lips. And I never smoked cigarettes, but I imagine people who smoke cigarettes have a similar experience, that they need a substitute for that. And so part of that stress, when I needed to focus at work, is I would grab the carbonated seltzer flavored water, and I would drink that, and touch it to my lips and take a swig of it and get the sort of the hit of the carbonation, but it wouldn't be the sugar rush, it wouldn't be all the chemicals that diet soda has, but you still get a hit of the cool, refreshing beverage.
Yeah. So
And
you'd go like step by step from the full sugar soda to diet soda to the flavored seltzer.
yes,
And do you still consume the flavored seltzer, or have you stopped that as well?
what happened, give you the long answer to that. I mean, the short answer is I don't consume the flavored seltzer anymore. But so what happened was, the flavored seltzer helped me to get on that soccer team. So I was running, and I was trying to eat less food, eat more whole foods. Um, my wife and I had read about a paleo diet, um, and we weren't strict to it, but just the concept of eating foods that were less processed, that was healthier. And so I was drinking the flavored seltzer, and I was exercising a lot. So I was playing soccer and I was running, and I was able to lose the weight that I wanted to lose. But the unfortunate thing was that my losing that weight was so dependent upon the exercise that I was doing. And so when I got a nagging injury from running, my Achilles heel, competitive running, and it really stressed my Achilles heel. And it got so bad after a year, and I had lost my weight. So I mean, you think at least I thought everything's great. It's great. I'm happy. It's good. Weight's gone, but I've got this small problem. I can't walk anymore.
Yeah,
And
small problem.
I mean, I could like barely walk if so. I had lost my weight in that period of time, mainly through exercising. Yes, I had quit soda, but I was exercising like crazy, and I was still drinking the flavored seltzer.
Okay.
So I stopped exercising, and it takes a long time for the Achilles to heal up, and it has healed. It's fine. I could always re-injure it by overstressing it, but um, I was starving at that time too, because part of losing weight was dieting, uh, reduce calories, and I was starving. And I'd lost my weight, and I just started to eat more again. And one of the foods that I was eating, was ice cream. When I started, like, this is after I stopped running, and I lost the motivation to stay dieting, or I was just starving so much that my body was saying, "Hey, let's eat some more food." And I was like, "Okay, I lost my weight. I'm in good shape. I can afford to eat more." And I would add ice cream and all that sugar, and I would eat candy bars too. And it's like, one should know that you don't just start adding back this food, but I lost my weight. Maybe I can have a dessert. I can have a bowl of ice cream, can't I?
Yeah.
And I'd say within 2 years, I probably regained every single pound.
Yeah, that's never happened to anyone before.
Yeah. And I wasn't exercising, but I was at that time I was coaching, assistant coaching, volunteer coaching on my son's soccer teams. And so my Achilles had healed up. So I was able to play soccer with the boys, and they were, young kids. And I was able to, as a coach, I could tell the kids to run around the soccer field 10 times. I might run down the soccer field once, just to show them how to do something. And then I would stop and, not let them know I'm winded and can't go on, but I would just stop and I'm done and let the kids go around. But my point of saying this is that I felt like I was getting some exercise because I was outside, but I wasn't really exercising. I was just showing kids how to do moves, and then I would stop and, the kids would be running around like crazy. So I was not getting the exercise, but I kind of was fooling myself thinking I was, and all the weight was just coming right back on. And,
Were you still in that paradigm of, in order to lose weight, I need to exercise more?
yes, in order to lose weight, I need to exercise more. And I probably had some self-pity where I can't run. And if I can't run, so yes, I could run down a grass soccer field and be okay, but that's, like 100 yards. That's nothing compared to, I was running, 10K.
So yeah, and for you, there was no other way to lose weight than exercise, right?
In my mindset, I was thinking that exercise was the key. I'm kind of, almost ashamed to think of this now, but like in the past, anytime I saw someone who was heavy, and, more cruel in my mind, anytime I saw someone who I saw as being fat, when I was skinny, like my dad, it's like that. My dad, he's fat. He's fat because he doesn't exercise. And he told me he ran cross country. It's like, there's no way you ever did that. Like, you don't exercise. You're
Yeah,
fat.
but it's such a common connection that we make and it's just the message that we've gotten all our lives, right? Eat less, move more, and you
Right.
won't get fat.
Right. And my focus wasn't even as much on eat less back then. So again, those images of my dad was because he wasn't exercise. It wasn't really because I didn't make the connection that he was drinking soda or eating too much. I wasn't making the connection until much later in my life. So it's really this thing in my head that I had to exercise and diet. So by that time, I knew I had to diet, but I was just always so hungry. I had no energy. It's like a vicious circle.
Yeah.
I just felt completely trapped, and the weight came on, and it's like, oh well, this is what happens. You get old, you get fat, you get diabetes. Like I knew that was not where I wanted to go, but I kind of had resigned myself to say, well,
And that's, yeah, we get ourselves to a point where we think, well, that's just inevitable when we get older. And it's so disempowering because it's like we're victims of this lifestyle that, well, not even a lifestyle, it's just this reality that we create for ourselves, where we have no personal power, nothing that we can do. It's just, we believe that it's normal as you get older to get fatter and sicker.
right. And you feel good when you eat a bowl of ice cream.
Right. And don't you
For that,
take my ice cream away. Yeah.
right, for that moment, it's like if you start feeling sad about something, so I'll have some ice cream. I was still soda free though.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, you'd gotten to that point where it's not like you were saying, well, I'm going to get, I'm going to become a fat old man anyway, so I might as well drink soda.
Right. But I knew that soda was an addiction, and I was not going to go back to that addiction. And I thought if I was drinking soda, I wouldn't be 230 pounds, I would be 300 pounds. I had new addictions though. I had addictions to things like ice cream, and I knew that was a problem. And I had known that like a paleo diet, and I'm not trying to push that specific diet, it's just an example of like a whole foods diet. I knew that was the better way to go, and that I should not be eating ice cream. I should not have a candy bar. I should not have a cookie. I knew I shouldn't have these foods with sugar, but it was like very difficult to almost impossible to not have those foods. That's where I was at that moment around like age 50. And I
Yeah.
also knew I should exercise, or I believed I should exercise, and I didn't feel as though I could effectively exercise enough to overcome, all the weight I put on.
And what moved the needle for you to move from that very common paradigm to today, to how you feel today and how you eat today?
Yeah, in my mind, it's almost like a miracle, and I'm not I'm not outwardly a very religious person, and I don't necessarily want to say that there was some literal miracle, and I don't really want to give it like a religious perspective, but there was something that just a thought that just came to me one day as if it was a miracle. And the situation was, um, it was Christmas 2019. So I would have been 54 at that time, I believe. And like I said, my wife's a great cook, and my son, by this time, he's in high school playing high school sports, still thin as a rail. Both my son and I were sitting in the living room, and it's maybe a week before Christmas, and my wife's making Christmas cookies, and she loves to cook. I mean, this is her thing. I feel bad saying it because I think, well, I'm taking advantage of her cooking, but I mean, she loves to cook. That's what we do. And so my son and I are waiting for cookies, and you can smell them. And I'm 230 pounds, and I know the weight's just going to keep going up and up. And I'm just sitting there, and this is the miracle part, because I had no hope of losing weight. I had resigned myself to just being fat. I had resigned myself toward health problems, and I'd started having more health problems at that time. And maybe this is where the thought came from, because like I had various symptoms, like my heart didn't feel good. Like I had like chest pains, not like sudden chest pains, like I should go see a doctor, or at least I'm reluctant to ever see a doctor for anything, but it's something didn't feel right. It's like something wasn't right there. I had eye pains. I had aversions to light. I had various things that were happening. I'm not going to go into all the things, but there's a lot of various things going on in my body that just were not right. That I've looked up many of them, and it seems as though most, if not all of them, are associated with diabetes. And so I was sitting there and also being tired, always tired. Like I'd have to take a nap. I In order to drive home, I felt like I had to like take a 20-minute power nap at work in order to drive home and stay awake. So I had no energy. But yet, so here I was sitting in the living room with my son, and we're waiting for cookies to come. And I just thought to myself, I can't do this. It's like I know these are bad for me. I know there's the sugar, the calories, and I just can't do this. And so I just stopped at that moment, and I told my wife that I can't eat this food anymore. And there's an emotional component, because part of the way we express love, I think, is by making food, eating food, appreciating food. And so I really had to have a deep discussion with her about that she understood it was not personal. I loved her cooking, I loved her, but I could not eat her food. I mean, not all of it, but like I wasn't going to go for leftovers. I was going to leave food unfinished. And I may have grown up close enough to the generation where, like I say, my father-in-law and my father, they both lived during World War II, and uh, had experienced the tail end of the depression, and so like it's a generation where they taught me, you eat all the food that's on your plate.
Yeah.
And so it was very difficult for me to let food go to waste. But I had to tell my wife I was going to do that, and I was going to stop eating after dinner. I just like made this giant announcement to myself that I'm going to stop eating after dinner. No ice cream, no Christmas cookies. Like, how hard that is, because we're like a week away from Christmas, and there's Christmas cookies and treats everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm not going to. So what I did, without even knowing what it was, is I decided, and I also made it part of a New Year's resolution for January 1st, 2020. So I was deciding this as we're heading into Christmas, like, a couple weeks ago, that I'm definitely going to have this figured out. And starting January 1st, I had three things. One was, I'm not going to eat after the dinner time, which at that time was 6 p.m. I'm not going to eat after 6 p.m. and before breakfast, which would be 6 a.m. So basically, it was a 12 hours, and I didn't know at the time, but that was called a fast. But I wasn't going to eat in that time period. And I wasn't having soda. That wasn't part of this because that was just a forgiven. I wasn't going to have soda. So the first thing was to not eat those 12 hours. The second thing was to get more sleep because I had problems with sleeping because I was needing to take naps during the middle of the day in order to get something done or drive home or even
Mm.
stay awake to watch a TV show. It's like I had to take a nap before I stayed up to watch a TV show. But then when it was time for bed, I wasn't getting to bed when I needed to. So I wasn't getting the right sleep. So that was the second thing, get enough sleep. And then the third thing was exercise. And I tried to make it a manageable thing that I could accomplish. And all I wanted to do was 20 minutes of exercise every day.
Not a 10-mile run
No,
then.
no, no. I very much was aware of not wanting to injure myself. And
Mm.
anything could count as exercise. And I knew in my head that the 20 minutes didn't mean like, okay, I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to take up 10 of those minutes of putting on some exercise clothes or, tying my shoes. That 20 minutes to me meant that after I get to whatever I'm doing, there's going to be 20 minutes of dedicated exercise where my heart rate is elevated and I'm burning calories. And I was going to do it every day. And it didn't matter what it was. It could be walking, it could be lifting weights, it could be anything. But I was going to do it every single day without a day of rest because I was going to switch things up. But it was more important to me just to be so committed that there was not a day that I wouldn't do it.
Mm.
So those were the three things: not eat for 12 hours, get enough sleep, and exercise.
And how did that work for you?
It started to make a difference almost immediately, like within 2 weeks. And certainly, by New Year's, I know everybody's, has New Year's resolutions, and I felt good. January 1st, I can do this. It was difficult not to eat. It was not eating for 12 hours was really, really difficult, but I felt good about it.
And of those 12 hours, I would imagine that you're sleeping for 7 or 8 of them.
Right. Right. So you would think it would be easy, but it wasn't easy, but I was doing it.
Right.
I was never not doing it. So, I mean, okay, it's just my personality. I have this kind of personality. It's like if I set a goal, I can't have exceptions. I know a lot of people allow lots of exceptions, but for me, I can't. Yeah. If I allow one day that I don't do anything, I'm afraid that I'm going to allow 10 days, 100 days of not doing it. So even it was very difficult to avoid food for those 12 hours, but I did it. It's kind of like quitting soda. It's like very difficult to quit soda, but I did it. And that's why I can't go back to having soda. I feel as though I can't drink one soda because I'm afraid that if I make one exception, I'm going to make another exception. And then next thing you know, I'll be buying a case of Coca-Cola every week. And not eating was difficult, but the results, the way I felt within a couple of weeks, I started to feel better, noticeably better. And within a month, my clothes were fitting looser, and it's just a 12-hour fast, and also exercising, right, and sleeping better. And it's like within a month, it's like I knew that this was the right path.
And did you feel that it was something that was sustainable for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I didn't really know that much about it to know if it was sustainable. I just knew that I was going to do that for the entire year. It was going to be sustainable for a year. I was going to do it for a year and see what happened. But I started to get interested in it and read more about it. And uh, that's where I discovered fasting, so like I started fasting, but I didn't know I was fasting. And I discovered fasting, and it's like I realized that this is a thing. I was fasting for 12 hours. And so I decided to increase the fast. And I didn't know if it was possible. And it seemed impossible, even though I was able to fast 12 hours. Like you say, I was sleeping, 8 hours of those. So I started to work on different fasting schedules where I was increasing it. And I was amazed at each step where I could lengthen the fast. That then I started to think that it was something that could go beyond 1 year, that it became that I understood it as a process that could be something that I would do for the rest of my life. yeah, that process of eating all day and sitting still doing nothing. So with fasting, it's like not only am I not eating all day, but I have incentive to get up and move around. And I
Yeah.
have the increased energy that wants me to move around. And I also have the increased focus, which is probably an evolutionary utility, something that was useful, is not only the energy, but the focus. So like, I don't know if, my caveman ancestors had to like, track down a saber-toothed tiger or something, and you need extreme focus, right, to do that. Well, that same focus allows me to do my job,
Right,
focus on a
right.
project.
And we don't even need to go that far back, but yes, definitely, the kind of collective brain fog that we have when we're consuming sugar is lifted when we don't consume it anymore. And even if we don't have saber-toothed tigers to chase anymore these days, that focus is all we need to be able to be efficient during the day.
That's why I'm not going to drink soda, but I don't need soda. I don't need caffeine. And I know some people who go into fasting, I've like read about on the Facebook groups, is that they need coffee because they're addicted to coffee. They're addicted to caffeine. I know coffee is never seen as harmful like soda, and even there's studies that coffee is useful, is healthy. But some people might have difficulty with coffee and keeping the fast. They may or may not. And I know it depends on the kind of coffee, and I know people want to put things in their coffee. But my point is, if someone was able to quit coffee, they would find that focus that coffee gives them. That focus is there in the fast.
And whether it's coffee or soda or sweet foods, the thing is, we often reach out for some kind of food or drink when we have an energy crash to get our energy back. And what we're saying is, again, like a paradigm shift where the way that you eat, the way that you live, that we do it, and it's not just the two of us, is such that we don't ever need that extra energy boost because we don't lack energy. It's stable energy.
Stable, even increasing. I'd say it increases the deeper into the fast I go, the more energy I get, which is the part where people would not believe that if they haven't done it.
Yeah, if you haven't experienced it yourself, it's really difficult to believe it or imagine it. A, because you haven't lived it yourself, but B, because the messages we get from, nutrition experts and so on, those messages are the complete opposite. They always tell us eat more often so that you don't get an energy crash. And our experience is the complete opposite. Listen, Jeff, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking to me. It was fascinating.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? What an amazing, inspiring story of Jeff, who went from being overweight and addicted to soda to being so committed to his own well-being that he's like, I'm doing this. And it started for a year and he never looked back. And if you want to get more energy with less sugar, then head on over to my website, aftersugarclub.com, and download your simple guide. And if you want to join the Life After Sugar program, this is the time to do it. It's open until Tuesday, May 4th, so make the most of it. And if you're listening to this podcast after the May 4th deadline, then put your name on the wait list to be the first to know when the program opens up again. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, scroll down and leave a review. I'd love to know what you think of this podcast.
That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.